Rain fell in thin silver lines across Harbor Street, blurring the neon sign of the cafe and softening the busy sidewalk outside. Inside, warm light filled the room, the smell of roasted coffee beans drifting through the air. Most customers were quiet, tucked into corners with phones, laptops, or half-finished pastries. Emily Carter pushed open the door and stepped inside, shaking rain from her coat. She paused for a second, scanning the room. Every small table was taken. She sighed under her breath. It had taken her 10 minutes to convince herself to come in instead of walking back to her empty apartment. Sitting alone in the rain felt worse than sitting alone with coffee. Then she saw it. One open chair at a round table near the window. 2 men were already there. Emily hesitated. Normally she would have left, but the rain was getting heavier, and she was tired of always choosing the easiest way out. She walked toward them, holding her cup carefully. "Excuse me," she said, voice polite but steady. "Would you mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full." The men looked up at the same time. One had silver-streaked hair and sharp but gentle features, wearing a navy jacket that looked expensive without trying too hard. The other had dark curls touched with gray, glasses perched low on his nose as he scrolled through his phone. They exchanged a quick look. "Go ahead," the silver-haired man said, moving his chair slightly. "Please." "Thank you," Emily said, relieved. She sat, placing her notebook on the table, and wrapped her hands around her coffee. For a moment, the three of them existed in polite silence, broken only by the hum of voices and the espresso machine. Emily tried to focus on her notebook. She didn't write. Her thoughts drifted instead, about the job interview that had gone nowhere, the apartment that still smelled like boxes, the breakup she kept pretending didn't hurt anymore. Her pen slipped. The notebook slid off her lap and landed on the floor with a soft thud. "Oh." Both men bent down at the same time. Their hands bumped. They laughed, surprised. The man with glasses picked up the notebook and handed it to her. "Here you go. Looks important." "Thank you," Emily said, smiling. "It's mostly blank, so I guess it survived." "Blank pages can be intimidating," he replied. "I'm Daniel." She nodded. "Emily." The silver-haired man leaned forward slightly. "Mark." Something about the calm way they said their names eased her nerves. Daniel glanced at the notebook cover. "So, writer? Student? Secret mastermind?" Emily chuckled. "Just someone who keeps telling herself she's going to write and then orders coffee instead." Mark smiled. "That's still progress." She laughed again, softer this time. They fell into conversation easily, like people who didn't realize they were lonely until someone spoke to them. Mark mentioned he had been sketching buildings in cafes lately. Daniel admitted he came there to escape phone calls. Emily told them she was new to the city. "From where?" Daniel asked. "Vancouver. I moved last month." "Big change," Mark said. "Yeah," she replied. "I thought it would feel exciting right away. Turns out it mostly feels quiet." Mark studied her for a moment, not in a rude way, more like he was listening with his eyes. Outside, the rain tapped harder on the glass. Daniel took a sip of his drink. "What made you pick this place today?" Emily hesitated. She wasn't sure why she wanted to be honest. Maybe it was the warm lights. Or the way neither of them felt rushed. "I didn't want to go straight home," she said. "My apartment still feels empty. I figured, noise is better than silence." Mark nodded slowly. "Been there," he said. Daniel gave a small smile. "More times than I like to admit." Emily looked down at her cup, then back up. "What about you two? You don't seem like random cafe strangers." Mark chuckled. "We meet here sometimes." "Neutral territory." "For thinking," Daniel added. "For pretending we're busy," Mark said. Emily smiled. She didn't realize how much she missed easy conversation until she was in it. Time slipped. Her coffee cooled. The rain blurred the world outside into streaks of gray. Mark leaned back in his chair. So, Emily, what's next for you? Job hunting? Exploring? Dramatic reinvention? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then answered honestly. I don't know yet. The words came out softer than she expected. Daniel tilted his head. That's fair. Emily took a breath. I guess I came in here because I was tired of feeling alone. The sentence hung in the air. Mark's smile faded into something gentler. Daniel's expression softened too. Neither of them rushed to fill the silence. And for the first time that day, Emily didn't feel foolish for saying it. She felt seen. The rain kept falling. And something quiet but powerful shifted at that small cafe table, though none of them yet understood what it meant. The rain softened outside, turning into a light mist, but inside Harbor Street Café, the warmth lingered. Emily sat back in her chair, feeling a strange mix of relief and nervous energy. She hadn't expected two strangers to care, to actually listen to her in the way Mark and Daniel did. It was almost dizzying. Mark leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Lonely, he said quietly, repeating her word. I know that feeling. After my divorce, I spent weeks just sitting in cafes like this, pretending I had work to do. Avoiding home. His voice was calm but carried a hint of sadness. Emily's eyes widened slightly. You really get it? Daniel pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. I get it. When my publishing company started slowing down, I pretended I was busy answering emails. Really, I was just hiding from myself. Emily felt a spark of recognition. They weren't just being polite. They understood that quiet ache, the kind that followed you even when you tried to act normal. For a moment, the chatter of the cafe faded. It was just the three of them, sharing the kind of truth people rarely shared with strangers. I just moved here, Emily admitted. I thought starting over would be exciting. Instead, it's lonely. I thought I could handle it, but sometimes I can't. Her fingers fiddled with her cup. Mark nodded. Starting over is harder than it looks. People expect you to adjust quickly, to feel free, but it's a mess at first. You're allowed to feel that. Daniel smiled faintly. And the courage it takes to admit it is rare. Most people hide it. Emily felt warmth creep into her chest, a mix of relief and surprise. She wasn't used to being seen so fully by strangers. It was almost shocking how comfortable it felt. Mark tilted his head slightly. It's refreshing, really. Talking to someone honest. Not just polite small talk. Feels like connection. Emily's heartbeat quickened. She leaned forward without realizing it. I haven't felt that in a long time, she said softly. Daniel's eyes softened. Most people don't take the time to sit and listen anymore. I do. The words wrapped around her, gentle and steady, like a lifeline. She laughed quietly, partly from relief, partly because it surprised her to be so affected by two men she'd just met. Mark and Daniel laughed along with her, and the sound felt lighter than it had in months. Minutes passed, and the conversation deepened. Mark spoke about architecture and the way buildings could capture emotion, how he had lost the spark for designing until recently. Daniel told stories about running his publishing company, the challenges and unexpected joys of shaping stories for the world. Emily shared bits of her own past, carefully chosen, letting small truths slip between jokes and smiles. I didn't expect this, Emily said at one point, shaking her head. I thought cafes were just for coffee and pretending life is normal. Mark smiled warmly. Sometimes the best conversations happen where you least expect them. Daniel nodded. And sometimes they help you realize what you've been missing. Emily felt a quiet thrill. Here she was, a 26-year-old woman, and somehow she had stumbled into a moment where life felt bigger than her problems. The rain outside continued to blur the city lights, but inside, it was vivid, electric even. Mark glanced at his watch but didn't make a move. Time flies, doesn't it? Emily realized she had barely noticed it passing. I didn't even see it getting late, she said, surprised. Daniel gave a soft laugh. When conversation is good, it doesn't matter what time it is. Mark leaned back, his expression gentle. Would you like to continue this after the rain? Maybe a walk along the waterfront? Emily froze. Two men, both kind, both inviting, both standing at the edge of possibility. Her heart raced, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation, the thrill of something unknown. I'd like that, she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. Their smiles mirrored hers, Mark slow and warm, Daniel subtle but unmistakable. As they stood, gathering their coats and umbrellas, Emily noticed something new. She wasn't thinking about loneliness. She wasn't thinking about the failed job or the empty apartment. For the first time in weeks, she felt alive in the present, caught in something delicate but undeniable. Outside, the mist turned the streets silver. The city lights reflected in puddles, creating a quiet, shimmering world. Emily walked between Mark and Daniel, noticing the differences in their energy. Mark was steady, calm, deliberate. Daniel was observant, curious, playful in a quiet way. They talked as they walked, the words flowing easily. Daniel teased Mark gently about his dramatic ways, making Emily laugh. Mark smiled at her laugh, warmth radiating from his eyes. She felt the brush of Mark's jacket sleeve when he handed it to her after a sudden cold gust. Their fingers touched, a spark passing unnoticed but electric. Emily realized she hadn't laughed like this in months. The city around them faded to background noise. It was just the three of them, strangers no longer, but something more. Something unspoken, waiting in the space between words and glances. At one point, they stopped near the pier. The water was dark, calm, stretching into the horizon, reflecting city lights like scattered diamonds. Daniel admitted quietly that this was a place he came to think, to find clarity. Emily leaned on the railing, feeling the gentle movement of the water and the thrill of the unknown that surrounded them. Mark looked at her earnestly. You don't give yourself enough credit. Her breath caught. Something in his tone made her heart lurch, not romantic exactly, but personal, attentive, seeing her in a way few had. Daniel watched, his expression unreadable but gentle, and Emily realized that both men were aware of the tension that had started to form, the quiet connection she hadn't expected. The mist settled around them, the city quiet except for the water lapping below. Emily felt a flutter of excitement, of fear, of possibility. She didn't know what this meant yet, what this could become, but she felt something rare. Something worth exploring. And in that moment, she knew one thing clearly, her life had just shifted, subtly but irreversibly, in a direction she hadn't planned, with two people who might change everything. The cafe was quiet except for the soft hum of conversation and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. Emily sat between Mark and Daniel, her hands wrapped around her cup, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. She had expected a short, polite conversation, maybe a smile or two, and then a quick exit back into the rainy streets. Instead, she was caught in something unexpected, something that felt alive. Mark leaned back slightly, studying her with a calm intensity. Lonely, he said quietly, repeating the words she had spoken earlier. His voice was soft but carried weight, like he understood it in a way only experience could teach. Emily blinked. You understand? Daniel adjusted his glasses and nodded. More than you think. I've spent too many nights pretending to be busy, scrolling through emails, avoiding my own thoughts. It's easier than admitting you're alone. Emily felt a spark of recognition. They weren't just being polite, they genuinely knew what it was like to feel isolated even when surrounded by people. For the first time that week, she didn't feel the usual wall of self-consciousness. She felt seen. I just moved here, she admitted, her voice quiet. I thought a new city would feel exciting. Instead, it's been a lot of quiet, a lot of wondering if I made a mistake. Mark nodded slowly. Starting over isn't easy. People think it's romantic, refreshing. It's not. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. And it takes time to feel settled again. Daniel smiled faintly. And it takes courage to admit it. Most people hide it. Pretend they're okay. Emily's chest warmed. She wasn't used to being met with such understanding. She laughed softly, surprised at how relieved she felt just to be honest with strangers. Mark smiled back, and Daniel's expression softened. Sometimes, the best conversations happen when you least expect them, Mark said, his eyes meeting hers. Emily nodded, realizing she agreed. She had come in to escape the rain and ended up in a conversation that was slowly lifting the weight she had been carrying. Daniel leaned back, looking thoughtful. It's funny how connection works. You don't need to know someone for years to feel understood. Sometimes it's right in front of you. They talked about more than loneliness. Mark shared his experiences as an architect, the excitement he used to feel and the frustration he had recently rediscovered. Daniel spoke of running his publishing company, the thrill of shaping stories and the uncertainty that came with running your own business. Emily spoke cautiously at first, sharing glimpses of her own past, her recent breakup, and the challenge of moving to a new city alone. I didn't expect this, Emily said after a pause. I thought cafes were just for coffee, reading, and pretending life is normal. Mark gave a small smile. Life is full of surprises. Sometimes the simplest places give the deepest conversations. Daniel nodded. And sometimes, they help you realize what's been missing. Emily's heart beat faster. She felt a thrill she hadn't felt in months. She was laughing, smiling, and thinking about things beyond her own worries. The rain continued outside, misting the streets, but inside the cafe, time seemed to slow. Mark glanced at his watch but didn't move to leave. Time flies when you're engaged, he said. Emily realized she hadn't noticed how late it had gotten. I didn't even see it, she admitted. Daniel chuckled softly. That's a good sign. Time slips away when the conversation matters. Mark leaned forward again, cautious but inviting. If you want, once the rain slows, we could continue. A walk along the waterfront, maybe? Emily froze for a moment. Two men, both kind, both interesting, both showing attention, offering a simple invitation. Her heart raced, a mixture of excitement and nerves. I'd like that, she said quietly. Her voice surprised even her with its steadiness. They both smiled, Mark slow and warm, Daniel subtle but clearly pleased. Emily stood, picking up her notebook and coat. She realized she didn't want this moment to end, even though it was only beginning. Outside, the mist had softened the city, reflecting streetlights on wet pavement. Emily walked between Mark and Daniel, noting the difference in their presence. Mark was grounded, calm, protective in a quiet way. Daniel was curious, attentive, and gently teasing. Both energies pulled her in different directions, but in a way that felt safe, not overwhelming. As they moved along the waterfront, Emily laughed at Daniel's teasing of Mark, something small but genuine. Mark smiled at her laugh, and the warmth made her heart skip. They stopped at a pier, the water dark and smooth, reflecting city lights like scattered gems. Daniel admitted softly that he came here when he needed clarity. Emily leaned on the railing, feeling the water's quiet pull and the thrill of the unknown that hung in the night air. Mark looked at her intently. You don't give yourself enough credit, he said gently. Her stomach flipped. The words weren't romantic exactly, but they carried care and attention. Daniel noticed, too, watching with an unreadable expression. Emily realized the connection she felt was shared by both men, and it left her dizzy and excited at the same time. The city hummed softly around them, mist curling in the lights. Emily's heartbeat raced, not from fear, but from possibility. She didn't know what might come next, or how this would evolve, but she knew one thing: life had shifted. Something new had begun, delicate and unexpected, with two people who had arrived at the right moment in her story. And as they walked back toward the cafe to dry off and say goodbyes, Emily understood that this was more than a chance meeting. It was the start of something that might change everything, though she couldn't yet see where it would lead. The night stretched ahead, full of unspoken potential, and she felt alive in a way she hadn't in months. The rain had finally slowed, leaving a soft mist over the streets. Emily stepped out of the cafe, pulling her coat tighter around her. The city smelled fresh, wet pavement mixed with coffee from nearby shops. Mark and Daniel walked beside her, umbrellas tucked under arms, their footsteps light on the slick sidewalk. Emily felt a strange thrill, two older men, both kind and intriguing, sharing this quiet moment with her. It was surreal, but not uncomfortable. Something about the way they listened, the way they smiled, made her heart feel lighter than it had in months. "So," Daniel said, glancing at her with a teasing smile, "do you always make strangers spend a rainy afternoon with you?" Emily laughed, shaking her head. "Not usually. I usually keep to myself." Mark added, "Good thing today isn't usual, then." His voice was calm, warm, steady, like sunlight through a window. Emily's chest tightened at the simple honesty in his tone. They walked toward the waterfront, where the streetlights reflected in puddles like scattered stars. Emily noticed details she hadn't before, the gentle sway of boats, the faint sound of water against the pier, the way the city seemed quieter after the rain. Daniel pointed at a row of old buildings lining the river. "I used to walk here when I needed to think. Helps me make sense of things." Emily leaned on the railing, feeling the mist on her face. "It's peaceful. Makes you forget everything else for a moment." Mark stepped closer. "You don't give yourself enough credit," he said quietly. His words were soft but certain, the kind that made her stomach flutter without trying. Daniel watched, silent, thoughtful, his eyes on her. Emily realized both men were aware of something unspoken between them, something electric, and it made her pulse quicken. The three of them talked as they moved along the pier. Daniel shared stories about running his company, the challenges, the small victories that made it worth it. Mark spoke of architecture, of buildings, and spaces that carried emotion, of moments when work felt like art. Emily listened, occasionally laughing, occasionally asking questions, feeling herself drawn into their worlds as they had into hers. At one point, a cold breeze made her shiver. Without hesitation, Mark shrugged off his jacket and offered it. "Here, you'll catch a chill." "Oh, no, you don't have to," Emily started, but he insisted. She took the jacket, their fingers brushing lightly. A spark passed, brief but undeniable. Daniel noticed and slowed slightly, giving them space, but his eyes never left her. The conversation turned personal. Daniel asked about her move, her family, her dreams. Emily found herself answering honestly, revealing more than she expected. She talked about the heartbreak that brought her here, the loneliness, the hope she was holding on to. Both men listened without judgment, their presence steady, supportive, attentive. "Most people hide this part of themselves," Daniel said quietly, looking out over the water. "You're brave for showing it, even to strangers." Emily felt heat in her chest, a mix of gratitude and something deeper. She hadn't realized how starved she was for understanding, for connection that didn't demand perfection or pretending. Mark smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "You're stronger than you think, Emily. Stronger than you give yourself credit for." Her breath caught at the sincerity in his voice. She looked from him to Daniel, noticing how both men were different, Mark calm and grounded, Daniel observant and gently playful, but connected in their attentiveness to her. Her heart raced in a way that was thrilling and frightening at the same time. They paused at the end of the pier, the water stretching dark and smooth ahead of them. Emily leaned on the railing, taking in the city lights reflected on the surface. The mist wrapped the three of them in a quiet bubble, the world outside fading away. Daniel finally spoke, his voice soft. "You're standing at a crossroads, Emily. Feels like everything is shifting." "I guess it is," she admitted. "I don't know what comes next." Mark nodded, his eyes on her. "And that's okay. You don't have to decide anything right now. Sometimes the right step is just noticing the path." Emily felt a rush of emotion, a combination of longing, fear, and excitement. The city hummed softly around them, but this moment, the quiet, the laughter, the gentle understanding, was all that mattered. They started walking back toward the cafe, slower now, savoring the night. Daniel made a small joke about Mark's dramatic way of noticing details, making Emily laugh again. Mark smiled at her laugh, warmth spreading from his eyes to her chest. Emily realized how alive she felt. Not just from excitement, but from being truly seen and valued, from the thrill of something new and undefined. She had come out that afternoon expecting nothing, yet found herself walking with two men who somehow understood parts of her that she kept hidden. They returned to the cafe entrance. Emily didn't want to say goodbye yet, not knowing how to explain the rush of emotion swirling in her chest. Both men watched her, quiet, patient, giving her space but not letting the moment feel ordinary. "I'm glad we met today," Mark said finally, his voice calm but charged with meaning. Daniel nodded. "Me too. More than I expected." Emily hesitated, then spoke honestly. "I didn't expect to meet anyone today. Let alone two people who make me feel this seen." The silence stretched, soft and heavy with unspoken possibilities. Emily knew that the connection she felt was real, that it wasn't fleeting, but she didn't yet understand how it would unfold. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing in the night air, the city, the mist, the warmth of their presence. And she realized, whatever happened next, her life had already shifted. The rain had stopped. The night held endless possibility. And Emily felt, more than ever, that this was the beginning of something that could change everything. The mist had settled over the city, leaving the streets glimmering under the streetlights. Emily walked slowly, the cafe behind her, her coat still slightly damp, and a fluttering feeling in her chest she couldn't name. Mark and Daniel walked beside her, quiet, their presence steady but charged with something unspoken. They stopped near the cafe entrance, the buzz of the evening crowd soft around them. Emily hesitated, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and caution. This was the moment where everything shifted. "I'm glad we met you today," Mark said first, his voice calm but serious. "It's rare to meet someone who makes you feel understood so quickly." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. You have this way of seeing the world that's different. And it's refreshing." Emily blinked, surprised by the honesty in both their words. She hadn't expected it. She had come out for a simple coffee, to distract herself from loneliness, and now she was standing here, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, connection. Can I ask something?" she said softly, a little nervous. "It's a bit awkward." They waited, attentive. "Are you friends?" Her question was careful, tentative, because she wasn't sure what she wanted to hear. Mark and Daniel exchanged a look, subtle but full of meaning. Daniel exhaled slowly. "We are friends for 15 years. Mark added, "And we both know this might look strange. But we want to be honest." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "What does it look like?" Mark looked at her with calm sincerity. "It looks like we're both interested in you." Her heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, direct, and yet gentle. She wasn't used to being approached like this, not in a way that respected her feelings, her space, her choices. Daniel didn't speak immediately. Instead, he watched her with quiet patience, his eyes soft, attentive, not demanding. His presence alone said he respected her, even as he shared this delicate truth. Emily felt a rush of emotions, excitement, confusion, curiosity, a little fear. She wasn't sure what she should feel, what she should do, or even what she wanted. But she knew one thing, she didn't feel pressured. Not by either of them. "I didn't expect this," she said honestly. "Not today. Not like this. I didn't expect to meet anyone at all, let alone two people who see me this way." Mark smiled gently. "You deserve to be seen. And we didn't want to pretend otherwise." Daniel's expression softened. "You don't owe us anything, Emily. We just wanted to be honest." She swallowed, her thoughts racing. Two men, both kind, both honest, both standing here waiting, neither pushing, both respecting her choices. It was overwhelming in the best way. Emily looked from Mark to Daniel, noting how different they were. Mark was calm, protective, steady. Daniel was observant, thoughtful, playful in subtle ways. Both drew her in, each in their own way, yet there was no competition, only honesty. I don't want to decide anything right now, she said carefully. I need time to think. Mark nodded slowly. That's fine. No rush. Daniel smiled softly. We just want to see you again. On your terms. Her chest lifted. Relief mixed with excitement. She had expected awkwardness, confusion, maybe even tension. Instead, there was patience, understanding, and a strange sense of safety she hadn't felt in months. The city around them seemed to quiet, leaving only the soft hum of lights and distant traffic. Emily felt a flutter of possibility she hadn't expected when she woke up that morning. She had walked into the cafe looking for distraction, and now she was standing at the edge of something she couldn't yet define. Well, she said finally, a small smile tugging at her lips, I'd like to see you again. Both of you. Separately, or together. I don't know yet, but I want to see you. Mark's smile deepened, warm and steady. Daniel's eyes softened, a faint spark of amusement and admiration in his gaze. The three of them lingered in that quiet moment, the world moving around them but irrelevant. The possibilities were unspoken, wide open, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. Emily felt her heart race, not from fear but from hope. She had spent so long protecting herself, keeping distance, feeling lonely. And now, here they were, two people who had shown up in her life, who didn't demand her choices but offered honesty, care, and attention. I guess. I'll see you soon, she said, stepping back, feeling the rain-cooled air on her face, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Mark and Daniel watched her go, quiet, thoughtful. Neither spoke, because words weren't needed. Each understood the unspoken truth, this was just the beginning. Emily walked away, her heart full of possibility, her mind spinning with questions, but a smile she couldn't hide breaking across her face. The night felt electric, full of potential, a story unfolding before her eyes. She knew life had changed today. And she knew, without a doubt, that she wanted to follow where it led. The rain had stopped. The streets shimmered under the lights. The city was alive. And Emily, for the first time in a long while, felt like she truly belonged, at least for now, in this moment, with the possibility of something beautiful waiting just around the corner. This encounter, simple at first, had opened doors she hadn't even known existed. It was complicated. It was emotional. It was thrilling. And most importantly, it was real. As she turned a corner, she glanced back once more. Mark and Daniel were still there, silent, watching, patient. And Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. The night stretched ahead, full of questions, possibilities, and the promise that this was only the beginning of a story she hadn't yet imagined.